Hey folks, Evil DM here, back with another episode of DC Heroes, Let's Learn the System. Haven't done this in quite some time. Like I said, when I like to do these as the mood strikes me, as the, will is there, the excitement, things like that. Before I get into things, just want to say welcome back. There's 10 more episodes that you can look at for information, but I'm going to continue along the path of what I was doing. Also, if you're interested in listening to a audio version podcast, we now have Crisis in the DC RPG, which is an audio podcast that myself and Colin from Dead Game Society, you may have heard of them, may not. You may want to Google them. They're all about all dead games or games that are out of print. He and I have picked up the DC banner and are using it as a podcast, and we're having fun with it. So far, as of this recording, we got 2 episodes out. The first one is mostly just an introduction type thing, going over some basic stuff. The second one gets into the nitty-gritty right away about rolling stats and everything. I mean, rolling on the chart and everything. We talk about Superman Year 1 and how to include that into a new game if you want to. You can find that at anchor.fm DC RPG, and I'll include a link down below for you to click on. Go ahead and listen to those and tell us what you think. But let's get into things today. We're going to start part 1 of damage, because damage is going to be broken into a couple different parts. It can't be described all in just one sitting because it's a little bit overwhelming. So when I'm talking damage, I'm talking about you have a physical body, which is basically your physical hit points. You have a mental, which is your mind, which is like you taking, psychic damage, things like that. And we have our spiritual, we have our mystical, which is our spirit hit points, so to speak. And that's magical attacks, things like that. So you're probably wondering, all right, so let's look at the body, for example. Let's just say you have a 6 body under your attributes for your stats. Now, that is how much physical damage you can take before dropping to 0, because when you hit 0, you fall unconscious. So let's just say you're in battle and you take 4 points of damage. That means you have 2 points to play with, but that doesn't mean your body stat is now at a 2. It just means current condition is at a 2 as opposed to a 6. So it's just kind of, think of it in D&D terms as hit points. And when you're rolling on the chart, it doesn't mean you roll at a 2. You still roll at a 6. No big deal. It's just counting your hit points out. Now, if you drop to 0, like I mentioned a moment ago, you do fall unconscious. And while you're unconscious, you cannot take any actions except for 2 things, or 1 thing. And I'll explain that a bit later. Now, and if any of your numbers, physical body, mental mind, mystical spirit, go to a negative number or 1 over your number, going back to the body example before, so we had 6. So if you go to -7, you're considered dead. Any other negative number you're considered, the best way to describe it is bleeding out or circling the drain of life, things like that. Now, before I move forward, I need to talk about 2 different types of combat. There is Bastion Combat, and then there's Killing Combat. The game assumes that everybody's doing Bastion Combat by default, and unless you say otherwise, you're going to be doing Bastion Combat. Now, Killing Combat, on the other hand, must be declared every time you attack before attacking. Can't say it afterwards. Can't switch it up and say, oh, no, I meant that. No, you have to say it before you roll and do your attack. That's how the game works. Unless, of course, the GM declares this is more of a different campaign, a gritty campaign, and decides that all combat is killing combat unless stated otherwise, which is very possible. It's up to the GM, so always ask. But by default, you're bashing combat. Now, what's the difference? Alright, so Bastion Combat assumes that all villains and heroes will be doing this by default. Like I said, Bastion Combat also prevents you from killing. So, for example, if you're attacking a villain and he only has 2 points of body left and you throw that punch and you do 6 points of damage to him, you're only going to do 2 points to reduce him to 0. The Bastion Combat only reduces you to 0 no matter what you do. There are some other factors to add into there, but we'll get to that in another video a little bit later. Killing Combat is just what it states, your intent to kill someone or wipe someone from the face of the earth. So instead of reducing them to 0 in our previous example, when you had 2 APs left, and you do 6 points of damage, you're bringing them now into -4. Once you are left in the negatives, your health declines by 1 every 15 minutes, 8 APs of time in game, until you go over the number by 1 again, -7. Also, entering killing combat does forfeit any and all hero points you would have earned or accumulated during the session. It's important to remember that, because as a hero, you don't want to kill someone. Unless, of course, the GM states otherwise with the rules. But, though, it does have a little paragraph that does state that if a hero responds to killing combat with killing combat, such as being attacked with killing combat, they would only lose half the amount, because they're only acting in defense of themselves, supposedly, or acting in accordance to what's happening to them. So, like I said before, there are some other factors, but remember, killing combat damage can happen from knockback damage, falling from great heights, and natural fire damage, not powers or anything like that. So it's really up to the GM's discretion at this point if knockback damage is going to become killing combat damage, because, well, does it count against you or not? So if you're on top of that building fighting, and the villain is on the on the ledge, and you as a hero punch him, knowing very well that you're going to waste hero points, which we'll get into later, to add more to your attack, and you know that's going to do a hell of an attack, and you start rolling doubles, he could possibly fall off that building and die, which means that could be held against you. So you have to worry about those things as well. But back to being in the negatives and dying. We'll step back again. Like I said, you lose 1 point for every 15 minutes of game time, which is 8 APs. Which represents you kind of dying slowly. I like to equate it to bleeding out, or losing sanity, or your magical essence is slowly fading away. However you want to equate it to the attribute that you're losing to help you remember it, that's fine. Now, you can be saved during combat, during your dying stage, if someone with a medicine skill comes over and does a few checks to do that for you. But then, again, that's got to be done in another video, because that's a little bit more in depth. I'm just going over the basics right now. Or you can use Desperation Recovery. That itself, I need to do another video on as well, because it took me a little bit to wrap my head around Desperation Recovery because of the way it's written. And then once you get it, you get it. But I want to explain it in more detail with a chart and just show you how it's done. Now, there is one thing else you can do during combat that allows you to, you know how in comic books when you read, or you watch any of the superhero shows on TV, you notice the heroes take damage, but they seem to just shrug it off, or they fall into something and you're like, oh crap, that dude's going to be damaged big time, but he just jumps right up, starts punching and fighting like nothing ever happened. Well, there's something called Last Ditch Defense. Last Ditch Defense basically is something that you can do to absorb the damage by using hero points. You must decide the moment you take damage if you want to use your Last Ditch Defense. And you could do that as many times as you want, as many hero points as you have, and absorb as much damage that you can up to the stat that it's involved, or the attribute that it's involved in. So if you have 6 in your body yet again, and you take 8 points of damage, or 8 APs of damage, you can absorb 6, because you can only go the maximum of the attribute that's being attacked or affected. And then you take the remainder, which will be the 2 if it's out of the 8. Okay. You could do that as long as you, like I said, as long as you have hero points, as long as, you're taking damage. And even if you fall to 0 or less, like you're unconscious and bleeding out, you can use it to absorb future, attacks. But you can't use it when you're to absorb damage of dying slowly, the -1 every 15 minutes. You can't use it for that. So, like I said, the same goes for mind and spirit, so I'm just using body as an example because that's probably the easiest one to relate this example to. Again, you can't use it for negating slow death. There is also a note in the book, whereas if you take enough damage at once that equals the attribute being affected or being defended, you will be stunned for that phase. So again, 6 body points. If you take a shot for 6, but decide, I'm going to use Last Ditch Effort, I'm going to absorb them 6. You would take no damage, but you would be stunned. And if you haven't moved or done your action, you would lose that chance because you're stunned. If you did move and did your action already, the next turn you're considered stunned for that turn, just to be going out on paper there. So that's just the basics, part 1 of combat damage, and then I have a couple more things to do in the next video that'll explain some of the things I missed in this video, if you understand what I'm saying. So hopefully you've learned something from this. Give me some comments below, give me some questions, ask the DM at theevildm.com is the preferred way to contact me, or you could just leave a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and share it out so more people will see it. Don't forget to download the new podcast, anchor.fm/DCRPG. So like that, with anything else we have to say, up and away, and good night, everybody.